Hello and welcome to Showcasing the Impact of Dark Social. My name is Mason Cosby. I'm the former Director of Growth at Gravity Global, the current host of the Marketing Ladder, and soon to be something if you want to keep your eyes out on LinkedIn. I'm excited to chat with you today about really how you can actually showcase what impacts you are having through a dark social presence. Let me walk you through a prime example. You get a new potential opportunity coming in and they indicate that they heard of you through a podcast. Now, your company runs a podcast, but also you have a ton of people that are going on other people's podcasts. So the question becomes, okay, they've heard of you through a podcast, but what podcast? And was that really it? They listened to one podcast episode and then they decided to come and buy a $100,000 software tool. And for most people, that's not the reality of their situation. There are hundreds of individualized touch points that really make up this journey through dark social. So the question then becomes, it's called dark social because it's difficult to track, but we know it works when done effectively. So how do we potentially even showcase the impact that dark social can have? So what I would like to walk through today at a high level, just from a philosophical perspective, is exactly how to do that. And it's a relatively simple change. So in your processes, when you have something that comes inbound and fills out a form, you have a number of fields on that form. And you probably have something that indicates, how did you hear about us? For most people, it is a drop down in which they indicate something like a LinkedIn, an email, some kind of a social outreach, an SDR, or something to that extent. And they list out their channels. And then people select the appropriate channel and they submit their form. And that's great. And then we map that up against our attribution software. Some of you are using Visible, some of you are using the out-of-box HubSpot functionality. And then you compare those two and you kind of go with typically what was put on the form, unless you've got some real use case as to why you should go away from that. But the reality is, I don't know if you've experienced this, but whatever that first option is seems to be the number one reason people hear about us. So what I found in my experience is that when you give people options, they're not going to give you the appropriate answer. That's the reality. They're just trying to get their form filled out. So they're going to select the first option, which is not super helpful and actually isn't just not helpful. It's actually detrimental because you are getting misinformation that you're treating as potentially gospel. So the other option that I think everyone should be doing is putting a "how did you hear about us" blank box. That is a required field on your inbound forms. And I know that there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, that will actually decrease our conversion rates. And as a result, we will not actually get as many form fills. And if you go look at some of the most recent posts from Chris Walker, he's actually done his own research based on his existing client base out of Refine Labs that showcases that's just not the case. It has next to no impact on the number of conversions that you experience from your forms. And what it does is it actually gives you highly detailed qualitative data that showcases a lot more than you would have gotten out of a dropdown. I have seen people that have come in through our inbound forms when I was working with Gravity that said, I've listened to 100 episodes of the Marketing Ladder. I've listened to Mason appear on X podcast, and it was a very specific podcast where we talked about practical execution around account-based marketing. I've engaged with Mason's social content for a year. That qualitative data is radically different than LinkedIn. Because again, I know stepping into that conversation, okay, they're pretty tuned in to one of our team members' content. What if we were able to surprise and delight that person by bringing that individual on this first call and showing that, hey, we actually took that data that you provided to us and we did something with it? You'd also probably see a higher conversion from an actual discovery to close because you're actually making changes based on the data that you receive. And I know that a lot of people will give pushback on the blank open field based on the fact that they think that there will be less conversions. But additionally, they feel like, okay, we can't actually trigger automation off of this. We can't appropriately report out of this. And I hear what you're saying. Actually, to some extent, there is an element at which that initial automation cannot be triggered. So, for example, if you have something around a partner and you trigger automation to thank the partner for sending a referral your way. So, for example, when I was at Gravity, we had Sendoso as a partner of ours. So, if we had on our form somebody that said, we heard of you through Sendoso, there could have been automation around thanking that partner and getting additional context and sending off an email, just something to that extent. There's a viable use case for that, but practically, most people don't have that automation set up. And the automation that you do have set up is likely able to be triggered after the call has been completed. So from the perspective of try to gather as much qualitative information on the front end, because once you've gathered that qualitative data, you can turn it quantitative. And the way in which we did that was, again, we had the open text field. That was one data point that showcased how a client came to us. We also did have our HubSpot attribution software, which typically was showing organic search or organic social. And then the other one is just the conversation with the client, just asking, hey, how did you hear about us? And you'll be interested to find the number of clients that actually share a different story than what they shared on their discovery form or on their inbound call request form. So as a result, you actually get a couple of different data points that actually can appropriately showcase, okay, they said that they heard about us through LinkedIn, but then when we asked them in the call, they said that they heard about us through a podcast. And again, what that just shows is they are engaging with your content in channels where you cannot one-to-one track what they are engaging with. But all of that data is super helpful so that you can then, on the back end, actually turn all of that qualitative data into quantitative data for reporting capabilities. So what you would then do is on the lead source, after that initial call, you would have it as an automated task for your sales team to then update the lead source. And I would have a primary lead source that would be something like marketing, sales, referral, dark social, potentially, if you wanted to go that route. And then you have a secondary lead source that goes a little bit deeper into the specific tactic or channel through which they claim that they found you. So that if you wanted to do sourcing, revenue source based reporting on individual tactics and channels, you can go that granular. Now, granted, we all know as marketers that it's not any one touch point that's going to be driving all of your revenue. And if you were to stop the other touch points, it could actually negatively impact all of your different touch points. But it is helpful to showcase, okay, this tactic is a great tactic specifically for conversion points. And we see a number of clients that are our best fit clients convert after engaging with this kind of content. That's a helpful way so that you can then start to maybe potentially route in your more awareness level content, maybe more people towards your podcast, maybe more people towards engaging with more people on LinkedIn, whatever that needs to look like for your business. So at a high level, what you want to do is ensure that you actually have an open text box on all of your inbound calls so that you can then capture an unfiltered and very direct, how did you hear about us response from your clients? Because again, when you provide a dropdown, they're often going to pick just the first option. And if you aren't providing anything, then you're losing out on incredible information on what's actually driving growth in your business. The next piece is in that first call, confirm, clarify, get additional detail on how they heard about you. And the other thing is if there's any information that they filled out on that connect call or on that initial discovery call form that they filled out, use that information to your advantage to create a better sales experience. If, again, they were engaging a ton with an individual on your team, see if you can bring that person to the call to really make that potential client feel like you actually value them and you're listening. And then the last thing is after that initial call, update your CRM based on whatever is a predetermined process that your marketing, your sales, your revenue operations team have come together to say, this is the process in which we will operate. So again, for us, what that was looking at the HubSpot attribution, looking at the how did you hear about us, and then actually reflecting on that call and saying, okay, this was the consistent theme. This will be the sourcing. This is either a referral, it's going to be marketing, it's going to be sales, and then having a secondary drop-down list on the back end for your sales team to get additional information and to further clarify. And then within your reporting suite, you will then do a lead source based deal report. So essentially, you're going to look at the deals that have closed and then filter those by lead sources so that you can actually see the amount of revenue that is coming from each lead. I hope this is helpful. And as you look at actually tracking the impact of dark social, again, feel free to ask me any questions through LinkedIn or through the marketing ladder. Thank you.